Long before monuments, marble, and power, this was a quiet stretch of land chosen to represent a new nation's future. Using historical artworks and modern technology, we revisit the American capital as it once was, when its streets were still forming, its landmarks unfinished, and its identity still taking shape. This is Washington, D.C. in the 19th century. Not as we know it today, but as it began. At the turn of the 19th century, Washington was not yet a capital of marble and monuments. It was a city imagined before it was built. Fields, riverbanks, and scattered buildings standing where power would one day reside. From across the Potomac, the new seat of government appeared modest, almost fragile, a bold idea rising slowly from farmland. Here, America's future was taking its first uncertain steps, not in stone, but in hope. Before it became a symbol known to the world, the president's house stood quietly on a wooded hill. Surrounded by trees, dirt paths, and open land, it felt less like a palace of power and more like a residence in a frontier capital.
It is recovering
Here,
remarkably
authority
well from
lived
the
without
fire,
spectacle,
wouldn't you agree?
guarded
Indeed,
not by walls,
the suit
but by
cannot
distance,
hide its
silence,
grandeur.
and the weight of a young nation finding its voice. This was leadership before legend. Washington was never meant to rise suddenly. It began as an idea. Scattered buildings, open fields, dirt roads, and a city still deciding what it would become. From this quiet landscape, the foundations of American power were laid slowly, deliberately. Here, the capital was not yet a monument. It was a promise. By the mid-19th century, Washington was no longer an idea. It had become a city under watch, guarded, organized, and shaped by conflict. Rows of camps stretched across open land, soldiers drilled beneath the flag, and the capital prepared itself for a nation at war. Here, Washington stood not just as a seat of power, but as a line of defense. By the late 19th century, Washington began to change. No longer just a guarded capital, it turned outward, toward trade, movement, and progress. Steam and sail shared the river, smoke rose from industry, and the city's future stretched beyond its shores. Here, along the Potomac, Washington learned to move. Washington was no longer quiet. On days like this, the city belonged to the people. Workers, families, soldiers, and statesmen gathered on muddy streets, not for spectacle, but for history. Here, the nation watched itself take shape. Before monuments rose in stone, Washington was still a landscape. The Potomac moved quietly past farms, wagons, and riverboats, connecting a young capital to the wider world. Here, government met wilderness, and a nation learned where it stood. The heart of power did not stand alone. Behind the columns of government, ordinary lives unfolded. Quiet streets, small homes, chimneys rising beside history. Washington was not yet a monument city. It was a place where politics and daily life shared the same walls. Washington was not built to impress the present. It was built to endure the future. Wide avenues stretched outward from the capital, planned not for crowds, but for centuries yet to come. This was a city still becoming, a capital surrounded by trees, carriages, and quiet ambition. In this painting, you can see the early U.S. Treasury building standing alone on open ground, surrounded by dirt roads, scattered trees, and horse-drawn carriages. Men gather near the entrance, horses wait beside wagons, and the city stretches quietly into the distance, unfinished, restrained, and still finding its shape. This was Washington in its formative years, a capital defined less by grandeur and more by intention. Here, power was not announced through crowds or monuments, but through patience, brick by brick, policy by policy, as a young nation learned how to govern itself. In this image, you can see the United States Capitol rising at the center of Washington City, its great dome newly completed and dominating the landscape. The wide steps stand empty, trees are still young, and the grounds remain open and unfinished, reflecting a capital still under construction. This was Washington during a moment of uncertainty, when the nation was divided, yet its symbols of unity were being built higher than ever. Even in times of conflict, the city continued forward, shaping the seat of government that would define America for generations. Washington was shaped by people who carried responsibility more than ambition. Clerks, lawmakers, families, and workers moved through these streets, not seeking spectacle, but stability. The city grew quietly, through decisions, conversations, and ordinary days that built something lasting. If you'd like to continue walking through the cities that shaped our world, subscribe and return for the next journey through time.